I want a deep, detailed version of your story, Lacey. Mikkel got to tell his story, and so we'll have a discussion, but we want a deep version of your story, okay?
It's very similar to his, actually. I found myself doing a lot of this the whole time he was talking.
Well, I actually thought that his story would be empowering for you. So, yeah, Mikkel, I've been working with Lacey for some time now and have gotten to know her. Her kids attended our school for a period of time.
Amazing.
And yeah, I think I love actually, Mikkel, how at the very end of your talk you said, you've got to live your dreams because you're a high school dropout. I thought that was so cool.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true.
Let's rub it in their faces. It's going to wait for a few minutes to see if other people join, but maybe we'll have a relatively small group here. That's okay. But Mikkel, I thought since you just spoke for a bit, we'd let Lacey start and kind of give a good deep version of her story. And then you can kind of riff off of her, and then the three of us can dive in and discuss it with our audience. Sound
Amazing.
good?
Maybe I get to ask Lacey some questions as well. I host a podcast, so I'm good at interviewing as well. Have some fun.
Beautiful.
Way to make me nervous.
You're among friends, Lacey. So give us the Lacey Price story.
So, very much like you, Mikkel, I did not do well in school. My very first extremely negative experience was third grade. And I couldn't read. I am also very dyslexic. And, at that time you read in line. So everyone in the class read. And it was my turn to read, and I just couldn't. And my teacher embarrassed me very, very much. And from that point on, I did not hardly read at all. I faked my way through school. I cheated. I did not read things. And I graduated high school barely being able to read. I had no reading comprehension, none at all. And I got my real estate license at 18. I took that test 13 times. And now I am a very successful real estate agent and also a residential contractor. I do very well. I love to read, very much like you. I don't read 100 books a year. Don't have time for that, unfortunately. But I wouldn't have gotten there had I not met a very, very good mentor who asked me, "Do you read?" And I said, "Oh, no, I hate to read. I can't read. I don't know how to read. Really, I don't." And he said, "Well, how do you have an original thought?" And that was really powerful to me. I was only like 21 at the time, and just realized that I really hadn't done much to educate myself. And even though I was very smart and was doing well, I wasn't very worldly. I didn't have the information I needed to really work with the people that I wanted to or go the places I wanted to. And at the time I was in college too. As soon as I got out of high school, I immediately went to college, thankfully to a neighbor who pushed me very, very hard to go to college. My parents cared nothing about school. I had a lot of freedom. I had my first vehicle when I was like 12 years old, and I drove around the neighborhood. My parents they're great parents. They were like free range. They let me free range. So I got a lot of experience in life from that. But fast forward to having kids and not really understanding the education system, my youngest son didn't speak very well. When he was like 3, the doctor started telling me something's wrong with him. You need to take him to a speech therapist because he's not speaking. And so we did that, and then we go to VPK and not doing very well. And we started seeing some behaviors that he was very violent. At one time, he stabbed a student. He choked another student. He's VPK, choked another student. He got in trouble and tore the front office apart. My mom said when she walked in there wasn't a desk standing. There wasn't nothing on the desk. Aiden is, he's a good kid. Like, he was a very good kid. I could teach him anything, but he was not doing well in BPK and scared me. And they wanted to kick him out after that. And I begged them not to, because it was the best program in our city. And they sent me to this program called Child Find. And he went in there, sat down with this nice lady named Jan Young, and she assessed him, and she said his IQ score, she didn't assess his IQ, but she told me his IQ score would be very high if she had, because he was doing things that other kids were not able to do. And that the issue was not with Aiden, it was that the program that he was in was not fit for him. And I went back, told them what she said, and provided them a report and said, you won't be kicking him out. He'll be staying, and we're going to make it work for him. And that's what happened. But then we go to kindergarten, and he wasn't doing well. Within like the first or second week of school, he was not allowed to play at recess, and being set out at lunch. And the lady, the teacher, was actually someone I knew very well. And so concerned me. I started sitting in class every week with him, working in the classroom so that I could see what was going on. And what I found was that there was just a handful of kids who were being left behind. They weren't getting it, so they weren't getting participation. And I fought for him then. And we go to another school, second grade or first grade. I fought for him. Second grade, I fought for him. By second grade, I was begging for an IEP because I was there all the time. I was having to sit in class to make sure he was doing okay. And no one wanted to help me because Aiden was testing above the district on all of these standardized tests, but he wasn't performing in class. And they thought it was because he just didn't want to participate. Except Aiden really liked to learn. I could teach this kid anything. He seemed so smart to me. And I was frustrated because I didn't know why he wasn't making it in school. So I forced them to give him an IEP. I went and found a psychologist, and I told them that if they didn't give me that IEP, that I would go get an attorney. And we'd just go through what they were doing in their practices and see if they were doing it right. Didn't take them long to call me and say, here's your IEP. Except I learned that didn't work. That actually made the situation worse. Because now Aiden was in a group of kids that were different. And he was getting bullied a lot more than normal. And I have always told my kids that school is like prison. You cannot let people mess with you, because if you do, they will come at you in numbers. You have to stand up for yourself. I didn't expect it to be as dramatic as it was. There were, by the time we got into the 7th grade, the year we left was the 7th grade, and Aiden had 7 fights that year, none of which he started. All of them were people bullying him. And, I guess when you push a kid to really stand up for themselves, I didn't really think about, I didn't think about how much that was gonna affect him, because it was getting him in a lot of trouble, and they were ready to kick him out. At which point I said, fine, we'll leave. And we did. And it has been, he left the 7th grade only reading on a 3rd grade level. He never came out of his room to spend any time with us. And he couldn't communicate verbally very well. It's very hard to hold a conversation with him because we weren't on the same page ever. But in a year, he now reads very well. He communicates very well. In fact, Aiden never liked to use a computer, and I have waited. He's got a brand new computer from Dell that doesn't work, and I've waited months to fix it. And this week he picked it up and fixed it himself. He went to the internet, Googled it, worked with my mom, and figured it out. And there's no way a year ago he could have done that. He's working on automobiles or ATVs all by himself, watching videos and teaching himself to do these things. He's calling my dad and my brother, asking them to go to work with him, to apprentice, to make money, and investing that money in the things that he wants to do. He's learning how to be an entrepreneur. And I'm really not having to do anything but encourage him to go out and seek information and support him and help him. But for the most part, he does it on his own. And the other two are exactly the same. They have grown so much, but they're seemingly normal in this school box. They fit in pretty well, except my middle child is very much a troublemaker. In the very same year that we left last year, he was a fifth grader. And there were quite a few events that happened that led me to make this very big leap into homeschooling. In the same month, he is one of his best friends at school, who is a good kid and has a very good mom, joined a gang. And Chandler wanted to join it with him. And we're good moms like that. It just came to us. It literally came to my house and I had no control over it. That's how troubling the education system has got. He took a vape pen to school. And when I went in to pick him up, the resource officer told me that if he brought it back, that he would have a court date, which really scared me. Because Chandler is not as near as mischief as I was as a kid. Not yet, at least. And I know that if he gets there to doing the wild things that I did, he could find himself in a judicial system that is very unforgiving. And so I made a very, very scary leap to homeschool, and I'm very grateful that I did. But at the time, I had no idea, like, I couldn't really correlate my life experiences in school to what they were experiencing until I had experienced it with them. And my husband has very similar experience. He was in SLD classes, and it has really caused him a lot of mental anguish through the years of just trying to undo all of the negative baggage that gave him about himself. So I'm very passionate about draining the education system. I think it's very unhealthy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lacey. Do you have any questions for her or comments, Mikkel, before I dive in?
A couple of comments. I remember that when I was in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and you'd have to basically go around the class and each one of the kids would have to read. And I would have absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I would try to fake it. And it was just I think there was about 30, 32 kids or something like that. And there's nothing like being singled out and having to try to read in front of 30 of your peers, all exactly the same age, and you can't do it. Everyone else can do it, but not you. Wow.
And no support
that was
in the
a
room.
Nightmare. Yeah. And it's and then the teacher will just stand there and stop pat her foot, just waiting for you, no help. And then finally, after 2 or 3 minutes, you'd be like, okay, next. And then your heart would just be pounding. It's just, that was the worst experience ever. I remember that so vividly.
I would read the paragraph. So usually I would make an excuse to leave the classroom if I knew we had to read. But if I couldn't get out, I would read the paragraph over and over and over again, trying to memorize it. And even still, when my time would come up, I was mute. I would stutter. I could read, but I couldn't do it under pressure. And and even if I had read, I wasn't comprehending what I was reading. Not at that time.
Absolutely. Well, and then your other point about getting through school and cheating. I mean, I cheated on every test, every possible way. It was so cliche. It was out of a TV show or a movie. I would come up with elaborate schemes on how to not properly study, not go through these, not hand in things. I would make every excuse. I remember even not going to school, and my father would be up early in the morning, and I would hide behind the couch until he went off to work And then I would come out and I would do stuff all day long. And then I knew what time he'd be coming home. So I would leave the house an hour before. And then I pretend I was walking home from school. Like I did everything imaginable to get out of having to go to class. Like I was so creative.
That is so funny. I was just telling my kids a story about this today. I used to, in middle school and elementary school, I would skip class and I would just walk around the neighborhood or in the woods. And one time I got caught because we stupidly broke into someone's house. But I did, but I never really participated in school. Even when I was there, I wasn't participating.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adult, I think I did get some. I mean, you don't get as much value when you're cheating, but you do have to read. You do have to get the answers. I was apparently getting something out of it. I don't really know what, but I turned out okay. So
yeah,
but something.
But the problem is, okay, technically, yes, you learn something. But are we just trying to scrape by, or is this about making something an efficient use of your time, making it effective? Now,
Yep.
as far as I know, or anyone can ever convince me, we have a certain amount of time on planet Earth. That's just a fact. And we don't know how long that time is. So why are you going to spend the first 10 years just absolutely wasting it and hating your life and thinking that there's something wrong with you? Like 10 years. I'm like, I'm almost 40. I want to go back 10 years. I wish I was, almost 30. That'd be cool. I want that time back. And I spent less in the prison system, school, than anybody else did. And I still am upset that I had to spend any of that time. Like I would take it all back. I mean, I homeschool and unschool my kids. The only program that I would ever send my school to is Expat International School. And that's because we created it. We built it. That's why, we went out there and created something that would actually work and actually function and would not waste kids' time. I mean, you should see some of the children and how their faces light up. I mean, it's so different. And the relationship with the parents has gotten better with a lot of our kids. It's amazing.
That right there, my relationship with my children has become so much stronger since they've been homeschooling. They respect me more and we have a lot more fun together. We spend more time together. When they were in school, it was just routine. We got up in the mornings, I shipped them off to school, I went and did my thing, I picked them up in the evenings, fed them dinner, and went back to work, and they did their thing. We had no real family interaction, and that's because there wasn't any time for it. We were always on someone else's time. And coming out of the education system, at first, I had way too much time. I had way too much time with them. I really didn't know how to organize. I didn't know what to do. And it was a little overwhelming. But thankfully, with Michael's help, I was able to just normalize and get used to it. And now we have really good systems and routines, and they are so much more responsible. They do my dishes. They do the laundry. They clean up the yard. Like, I have found so much stuff for them to do because they got all this free time now, and they're learning. I don't think at first you really realize how much kids learn from just doing the dishes or just going out and mowing the grass. But there's always something to troubleshoot when you're doing things. Stuff comes up, and I noticed, like, just as simple as doing the dishes, they'll come in there and ask me 10 damn questions. Like, it's the dishes. Figure it out yourself. Why are you asking questions? But I think that's school. It teaches you to get information from other people rather than
always
go
be
out.
Dependent on someone else. To everything have to be top down. As an entrepreneur, that's the exact opposite. Nothing is top down. The buck stops with you, and if you don't make a change, if you don't do anything, then you get nothing. I mean, you are valued in what you bring to the marketplace, and if you don't bring enough value, no one is going to pay you. You are always paid what you're worth. I mean, have you ever read the books by John Taylor Gatto? He talks about how he was a public educator for 30 years, won Teacher of the Year. I know Michael and I have talked about him on many occasions. He discusses how what school's responsibility is to drive a wedge between the family and the child, to alienate the child from the church, from family, from friends, and even from themselves. This is the purpose of public education. They want children confused and not understanding what's happened. It's not a place of bringing people together and helping and communicating. It actually does the exact opposite. So you really have to think about, is that an environment that you want your children in, opposed to your kids being raised in the home by people who love them, individual attention, who have infinite patience for them. And I don't blame the teachers by any stretch. I mean, I think that a lot of teachers go into education with a hope of making a difference. But I think that under a certain amount of time in this type of system, everybody ends up in the same place. They're all disenfranchised. They are tired and they are not properly compensated, and they have no change and no power to do the things that they want. And I think it's just all around an absolutely atrocious place to put a child. And I just think that if a parent knows better, if they know that this is not a good option and they're still sending their children there, I think that it's just irresponsible. And I just hate to be so harsh and so blunt on these things. But we're so fortunate today to have options and places that kids can go to be supported. And it doesn't have to be homeschooling. It doesn't even have to be our school. This is not a pitch for my school at all. Every kid is completely different. But public education, that's the enemy. That's not what you want for your child.
And I 100% agree. It's people have a hard time though going against the norm. Even me, I knew exactly that I had to get out of that. I had lots of experiences. I even tried it once when my son was in the 5th grade, and I put him back because homeschooling was too hard. And so when I really finally decided that I was going to do that, I literally felt sick. Like I felt like I was going to be judged, like I was doing things wrong and I was going to ruin their life, even though I was 100% certain I was doing the right thing. I couldn't overcome those feelings. And had I not had Michael to really help me work through that and understand that I was not wrong, I was right, and I was doing the right thing, we might not still be here, because the first couple months were torture. They were torture, especially trying to get them to sit down to do Michael's school. They had been so used to sitting at a desk doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's passive. Most of it is passive. And with our school, yes, it's very active.
Yes. And then they come here. That's all they wanted to do was sit at the desk and do nothing. And it taught me a lot, though, about really unschooling. I really first needed to unschool them before I could even teach them to learn. And so what I did was I gave them some guidelines. You got to read this much. You got to watch this many educational videos. You got to do this many hours of math and science. But everything else is free. You go out and you do whatever you want to do as long as you get your priorities done first. Chores, schoolwork. And I didn't give them a lot. They do an hour of math. They do an hour of language arts. And they do an hour of whatever extracurricular, piano, working on something. And then they have to read and watch some sort of education on YouTube. And I let them watch whatever they want on YouTube. As long
interest-based learning.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I don't check it for right or wrong. I'm trying to teach them how to vet information, because life is complicated. There is no real right and wrong most of the time. And I want them to be able to flow through life, gathering information, throwing out what they don't want and accepting what they do. But, with good values.
In most cases, there's not a right or wrong. It's always going to be perspective. As long as we're showing respect to other people.
That's exactly right.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. I think if we can kind of agree to that, then most other things will come down to perspective and how you view things. Yeah. I would understand that completely, but definitely taking a time to, undo the damage and unschooling, I think is super, super valuable, super valuable. So good for you, for sure.
Thank you.
Just on the Gatto, to kind of loop that back in, and then I'll answer some of these questions. Gatto talks about conventional education being 13 years of training on how to be passive and how to be dependent. And now they actually have courses in adulting for college students. They teach college students how to wash dishes, how to wash their clothes, the most basic things. These people, are incompetent by any human standard. Yes, it's insane. It's insane.
Well, that goes back to Lacey's point about chores and work and part-time jobs and after-school things, where it's like you need to solve the problem and you need to learn how to take care of yourself. I think, the fact that, we can use another example. The fact that money is not talked about in public education is absolutely criminal. How you can only teach math in the theoretical sense and never in a practical sense just makes absolutely no sense to me. But I have a show called the Expat Money Show, and all we do all day long is talk about entrepreneurship, investing, and travel fun thrown in for fun. So I'm maybe a little bit biased on this, but I just think that is absolutely ridiculous that they don't understand compound interest. They can't balance their bank accounts. They don't understand anything about personal finance. Everything is just theoretical. I really think that it's done on purpose because they don't want kids to properly learn this. Otherwise, why are we still teaching via rote memorization? It's proven that it's an absolutely terrible system for acquiring knowledge, but it's the standard way that things are taught.
The education system is meant to create a workforce, not entrepreneurs. But I think the healthiest the world could be is when we can all become entrepreneurs, provide our individual service to other people. And I know that's not everyone is always going to be an entrepreneur, but that's the goal. You start in as a teenager and in your early 20s, providing what you can to other people, gathering information and learning. And eventually, hopefully, you get out to be able to provide that service on your own to other people so that you do have the freedom to do what you want in life. And being an entrepreneur does not mean you're going to be wealthy. I do very well in life, but I am not wealthy. We go through periods of time where we don't have any money, but we go through periods of time where we have lots of money. But those kinds of struggles in life are normal, and we need to prepare kids for that. Even if you have a job, those kinds of struggles are going to come. I was not prepared for what life was going to throw at me, the pressures of life when I left high school. And I think a childhood education should do better to prepare us for being ready to go out and work and provide service to people.
Well, Michael, do you remember conversations that you and I have had in the past about history and looking back at influential figures throughout history who were like 12 years old, 14-year-olds, 16 years old, generals that were leading armies in, royalty that had entire kingdoms under them as teenagers. And now it's like you can't tie your shoes in college. Like you have to be taught how to wash the dishes and, never had a real job or had to provide for yourself because you're doing your PhD now. You've got 20 years of academia, and it's like, this is
absolutely
ridiculous.
And there are lots of kids in the world today, and even in this country, who are feeding themselves at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And if we gave them more economic freedom to go out and do that, imagine what they could be doing rather than ending up in the judicial system, because a 9-year-old in this country cannot really feed themselves, but there are kids out there doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sit on the board of directors for a nonprofit in Uganda, and it's for teen mothers in the slums of Uganda who have gotten pregnant. We're talking 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girls. That's kind of the norm, about 13 to 16. And they don't have any parents. Their parents have died from HIV or other things. And now they have a small child. They've never attended any type of school. They're completely illiterate. And we're helping to provide education for the girls, but it's not what we would think of as traditional education. We start with literacy programs. Like I helped fund a full literacy program to take 60 girls, 60 teen mothers in 2022 and teach them how to read and write so that they can go out there and create a life from themselves. This is not about charity. It's not about giving them something. It's about, providing opportunities and letting them take it. And with that comes a ton of self-confidence. Like the girls go through, we have two different, we call them skills for life programs. One is tailoring. We have a normal tailoring class, and then we have an advanced tailoring. And they learn how to design their own clothes and make clothes and source the fabrics and everything like that. And then the other one is producing food and baking and things like that. So actually giving them an opportunity where they can be entrepreneurs and create wealth. And the mathematics that we teach them is super basic accounting, but how to, balance a float and how this functions and how to create a very simple balance sheet. And these are girls who have had nothing, but they're learning at 15 years old so that they can provide for their children. But in Canada and the United States, these kind of things like trades are looked down on and seen as bad and wrong and dirty. And it's like, it just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
We are over time, and I want to give people a break so that they can all get back on time for our last keynote with Drew Kapp of EdChoice. So I want to thank our guests, Lacey and Mikkel. Thank you both for wonderfully dynamic. I knew I had to get to the two of you together talking, and I'm so glad I did. I loved listening to you. So until next time we get to do this, I want to say goodbye, and we'll see you all at the bottom of the hour, or in 15 minutes for our last keynote. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Michael.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lacey.